Picture this. A civilization is dying. Their planet burns. They begged the galaxy for help, and everyone said no. Everyone except one species nobody thought mattered. This is the story of what happened when humanity decided the rules needed to change. Thessar Prime's protective network was collapsing. High Commander Vestal watched from his warship, the Eternal Vigil, as another Allied vessel erupted into silent flame. The Starward Hope had carried 300 people. Now it was nothing but wreckage and expanding gases, devoured by the relentless Vorash swarm. Vestal's arms felt like lead at his sides. 300 years. For 3 centuries, the Kellara Alliance had defended this border against the nightmare that emerged from beyond the galaxy's edge. 7 species had united, constructed fleets, started families, and perished defending worlds the rest of the galaxy had abandoned. And now, after just 6 months, it was over. "Commander, the Western defense line is gone," his tactical officer Thessar reported. The young Kelthara's voice stayed level, but Vestal noticed fear in those large, dark eyes. Estimated 20,000 enemy ships entering the inner system. 20,000. Vestal checked his tactical screen. The Kellara Alliance had 173 ships remaining. They once commanded 10,000, the greatest fleet in the outer regions. They had called themselves the Shield of the Frontier. Now they were just exhausted warriors waiting for death. "Pull all remaining forces back to the evacuation routes," Vestal commanded. "Everything to engines and defensive systems. We shield the transports. Nothing else counts anymore." On the primary screen, Thessar Prime rotated slowly in the void. The Kellara homeworld looked magnificent from orbit, with 3 silver moons and purple shimmering oceans beneath its red star. Vestal had been born there in the mountain settlements of the northern lands. He had a daughter there, or he had 3 days ago before the first Vorash landing ships touched down. He didn't know if she was still alive. He tried not to dwell on it. The Vorash weren't like other opponents. They didn't seek territory, resources, or political control. They sought to consume. Every ship in their swarm was a living organism grown from the remains of earlier victims. Tentacles replacing weapons, corrosive blood replacing fuel, collective minds replacing computers. They devoured metal and flesh equally, breaking everything into raw materials for more biovessels, more soldiers, more terror. 17 civilizations had fallen before them. 17 complete species erased from existence. The Kellara would become the 18th. "Sir, Ambassador Morin requests to speak with you," Thessar said softly. Vestal exhaled, the human he'd nearly forgotten her. "Connect her." The face appearing on his personal display was small and delicate compared to a Kellara, with pale skin and dark hair tied back firmly. Ambassador Lyra Morin was the sole human in the entire Thessar system, sent 5 years earlier as part of some diplomatic effort from Earth. Vestal had found her odd initially. Humans were newcomers to galactic civilization, barely a century since initial contact. Most species viewed them as primitive, useful mainly for simple commerce. But Morin had worked tirelessly, mastered the Kellara language, and earned admiration. Vestal regarded her as a friend, though he'd never voice it. "Commander," Morin said, her voice strained with tension. "I need evacuation. I'm still at the embassy and the Vorash are 3 blocks away." "I'll dispatch a shuttle right away," Vestal answered. "But Ambassador, you should have departed days ago. When the Council denied aid, I advised you to return to Earth." Morin's expression hardened. "I'm not deserting you, not while there's still hope." "There is no hope," Vestal said gently. "We transmitted distress calls to every major civilization. The Anthari Dominion, the Crystalline Collective, the Methane Breathers, even the isolated Vortex. All received our plea for assistance. All refused." "What about Earth? What did my people say?" Vestal paused. "Earth sent formal acknowledgement. They indicated they were reviewing the circumstances. That was 8 days ago. We've heard nothing since." He watched Morin's face crumble. For an instant she appeared ready to weep, but she maintained composure. Humans were emotional beings. Vestal had discovered. They experienced things intensely and attempted to conceal it. It rendered them both vulnerable and resilient in ways he didn't completely grasp. "They're not coming," Maureen whispered. "Nobody's coming." "No," Vestal confirmed. "We stand alone. We've always stood alone." The deck shook as the eternal vigil absorbed a strike. Warning screamed. Vestal's tactical display revealed 3 Vorash biovessels attaching to the port hull, their acid already dissolving outer plating. He issued commands rapidly, redirecting repair teams and sealing compartments. The biovessels were eliminated by defensive fire, but not before leaving wounds that would never properly heal. "Ambassador, a shuttle is heading to your position now," Vestal said. "It arrives in 4 minutes. Be prepared." "Understood," Maureen answered. Then softer, "I'm sorry, Vestal. I'm sorry my people didn't respond." "You are here," Vestal said. "That is sufficient." The connection terminated. Vestal returned his focus to the engagement, if it could even be labeled that. It resembled more of a gradual execution. The Vorash never rushed. They encircled their targets, eliminated escape routes, and consumed everything with systematic patience. Around Thessar Prime, the sky filled with their vessels. Thousands upon thousands of organic nightmares, glowing with bioluminescent light, extending appendages that could rip through steel. Another detonation. The carrier Defiant light fragmented, releasing escape pods into emptiness. Most would be intercepted by Vorash fighters before reaching safety. Vestal wanted to turn away, but he compelled himself to observe. These were his people. He would bear witness to their deaths. "Sir, the evacuation transports are prepared," Thessar reported. 15 ships carrying roughly 200,000 civilians. They request authorization to initiate hyperspace jump. 200,000 out of 4 billion. That was all they'd managed to rescue. "Authorization granted," Vestal said. "All combat ships form protective screen around transports. We purchase them every second possible." The Eternal Vigil moved into position alongside the remaining warships of the Alliance. They were a pathetic force, battered and broken, operated by drained soldiers who hadn't slept in days. But they maintained the line. They always maintained the line. The transports began jumping one by one, their hulls flickering as they entered hyperspace. 3 vessels made it, then 5, then 8. Then the Vorash attacked. A surge of biovessels rushed forward, disregarding defensive fire, launching themselves at the transports with suicidal intensity. They recognized the Kellara were escaping. They wouldn't permit it. 2 transports exploded before they could jump. A third was captured mid-transition, shredded by the forces involved. Fragments of the ship tumbled back into real space, scattering bodies and atmosphere. "Return fire," Vestal shouted. "Don't let them through." The Eternal Vigil's primary weapons activated, launching beams of concentrated energy into the mass of Vorash vessels. Each shot destroyed dozens, but there were always more, always more. The biovessels crashed against the defensive line like waves against cliffs, and gradually, inevitably, the cliffs began to crumble. 10 transports escaped, then 12, then 14. The final transport, the Mercy's Dawn, was attempting to jump when a Vorash heavy cruiser latched onto its engine compartment. The transport's captain struggled desperately to break free, but the biovessel held firm, injecting acid into the hull. The transport system started failing. Vestal reached a decision. "Helm, ramming trajectory, target that heavy cruiser." "Sir," Thessar stared at him. "You heard me. Ramming trajectory. All remaining power to forward shields and engines." "But Commander, if we do that, we perish." "We were always going to perish, Thessar," Vestal said calmly. "At least this way it signifies something." The Eternal Vigil turned, its enormous frame accelerating toward the Vorash heavy cruiser. The biovessel noticed too late. The flagship struck it at maximum speed, 3 million tons of metal and determination colliding into organic armor. Both vessels exploded in a flash of light that briefly outshone Thessar Prime's star. But the transport was liberated. The Mercy's Dawn jumped to hyperspace, carrying the final refugees of the Kelara homeworld. In the debris field that had been the eternal vigil, a single escape pod tumbled through space. Inside, High Commander Vesthal was barely conscious. He'd been hurled across the bridge during impact, and at least two of his arms were definitely broken. Emergency foam had sealed his suit's ruptures, but he was losing air gradually. It didn't matter. The Vorash would locate him soon enough. He activated his personal communicator with one functioning hand. It still had power somehow. He began recording. "This is High Commander Vesthal of the Kelara Alliance. If anyone discovers this message, know that we fought until the finish. The Vorash have seized Thessar Prime. Our people are dispersed. Our fleet is destroyed. We transmitted distress calls to every civilization in the galaxy. Nobody came. Nobody assisted. The Galactic Council elected to let us perish." He coughed, tasting blood. "To the species who will encounter the Vorash next, learn from our error. Don't trust the Council. Don't anticipate mercy from the darkness. Unite or fall separately." He paused, then added quietly, "To Ambassador Morin, if you survived, thank you for remaining. Tell Earth that the Kelara remember their compassion. Tell them we comprehend why they didn't come. We were always too distant, too insignificant. It's the nature of the galaxy. The powerful survive. The weak are forgotten." The communicator began beeping a warning. The Vorash were approaching. Vesthal could observe them on his pod's external cameras, bio-vessels moving through the wreckage like predators. He closed his eyes and thought of his daughter, of the mountain settlements, of 3 centuries of resistance. The Kelara had always been alone on the frontier. Perhaps they'd been foolish to hope for anything different. Across the system aboard the transport Mercy's Dawn, Ambassador Lyra Morin sat in a crowded refugee compartment and wept. Around her, Kelthara civilians huddled together, silent and traumatized. Children clung to parents who stared at nothing. The ship was heading for the nearest neutral station, 3 weeks away. Behind them, Thessar Prime burned. Morin pulled out her personal data pad and composed a message. She addressed it to Earth, to the United Nations, to anyone who would hear. Her fingers trembled as she typed. "This is Ambassador Lyra Morin, stationed with the Kelara Alliance. If you can hear this, we're dying out here. The Vorash swarm has captured Thessar Prime. The Kelara fleet is eliminated. 200,000 refugees escaped out of 4 billion. The Galactic Council refused assistance. Everyone refused assistance." She stopped, wiping tears from her face. "I know Earth is distant. I know we're just a minor diplomatic presence here. I know we're considered weak by galactic standards, but if there's anything we can do, anything at all, these people deserve better than silence. They were correct about the galaxy. Nobody comes when you fall." She transmitted the message and sat back, drained. Around her, the Kelara refugees waited in the darkness, traveling away from the only home they'd ever known. Behind them, the Vorash swarm continued its feast, devouring a civilization that had existed for 3 centuries. And in the cold void of space, High Commander Vesthal's escape pod was pulled into the belly of a bio-vessel, never to be seen again. The frontier was lost. The Kelara Alliance was shattered, and the galaxy turned its back, as it always had, on those who died in the outer darkness. The Galactic Senate Station floated in neutral space, equidistant from every major civilization. It was a massive structure constructed over centuries by dozens of species working together, gleaming towers reaching outward like flower petals, each one housing diplomatic quarters of a different member state. At the center was the Grand Council Chamber, where representatives met to determine the fate of trillions. Director James Chen stood outside the chamber doors and attempted to control his anger. He'd been waiting 3 hours. 3 hours while the council debated whether to even allow him to speak. As humanity's junior ambassador to the Galactic Council, Chen had minimal actual authority. Earth had been granted membership only 20 years ago, and even then as a minor voice. The older species treated humans like children playing at politics. The doors finally opened. A crystalline being, its body made of living geometric shapes that chimed when they moved, gestured for Chen to enter. "The Council will hear your petition now, Director Chen. You have 5 minutes. 5 minutes to plead for the lives of 4 billion people." Chen straightened his suit and walked into the chamber. The council chamber was circular, with representatives seated in rising tiers around a central platform. Chen took his place on that platform and looked up at the assembled powers of the galaxy. The Anthari Dominion occupied the highest seats, insectoid beings in elaborate robes who considered themselves the rightful rulers of civilized space. Below them sat the crystalline collective, the methane breathers in their pressurized suits, the vortex with their triple eyes, and dozens of others. Humanity's seat was on the lowest tier, barely above the floor. "Honored Council," Chen began, keeping his voice steady. "I come before you to request immediate military intervention in the Thessar Prime system. The Kelthara Alliance is under attack by the Vorash swarm. Their defense fleet has been reduced to less than 200 ships. Without aid, the entire Kelthara species faces extinction within days." An Anthari representative clicked its mandibles dismissively. "The Council is aware of the situation in the outer territories. We've reviewed the Kelthara distress call." "Then you know how desperate their situation is," Chen said. "The Vorash have already consumed 17 civilizations. The Kellara have held the frontier for 3 centuries, protecting all of us from this threat. They deserve our help." "The outer territories are not our concern," said a crystalline voice, musical and cold. "The Kellara chose to settle the galaxy's edge. They accepted the risks involved. It would be inefficient to divert military resources to a region of no strategic value." Chen felt his anger rising but forced it down. No strategic value. The Vorash don't stop. Every species they consume makes them stronger. If we let them take the Kelthara, they'll push deeper into the galaxy. Eventually, they'll reach worlds that you do consider strategically valuable. "The Vorash have never advanced past the frontier in 1,000 years, an Anthari replied. "They consume isolated civilizations and then retreat to digest their conquest. Historical patterns suggest they won't push further inward for decades." "Historical patterns?" Chen stared in disbelief. "You're willing to gamble billions of lives on historical patterns?" "We are willing to make logical decisions based on available data," the Anthari said coolly, "which is more than we can say for humanity. Your species has been in galactic society for barely a century. You have limited military capability and no experience in large-scale warfare. Your petition demonstrates emotional thinking rather than strategic analysis." A wave of agreement rippled through the chamber. Chen could see it on their faces, or what passed for faces among these species. They thought he was naive, a child begging adults to fix a problem he didn't understand. "What about the mutual defense clause in the Galactic Charter?" Chen demanded. "The Kellara are members of this council. You're obligated to assist them." "The mutual defense clause applies to threats against core territories," a Vortex representative explained patiently, as if speaking to someone slow. "The Thessar system is classified as frontier space. The clause doesn't apply." "That's a technicality, and you know it," Chen shot back. "You're hiding behind legal language to justify abandoning allies." The chamber erupted in angry chimes, clicks, and whistles. The council members didn't appreciate being accused of cowardice, even if it was true. The Anthari representative stood, its insectoid body looming large. "Director Chen, you forget your place. Humanity is a junior member of this council. You don't have standing to question our decisions. The petition for military aid to the Kelthara Alliance is denied. This discussion is concluded." "Wait," Chen said desperately. "Just give me 1 more minute." The discussion is concluded, the Anthari repeated firmly. You are dismissed. Guards appeared at Chen's sides, ready to escort him out. He looked around the chamber one last time, searching for any sign of compassion or courage. He found none. These civilizations had grown comfortable in their power. They'd forgotten what it meant to struggle to fight for survival. The Kelara were dying, and the council was choosing to do nothing. Chen let the guards lead him out. As the doors closed behind him, he heard the council moving on to their next item of business, something about trade regulations. The death of an entire species was just another agenda item to be dismissed and forgotten. He walked through the station's corridors in a daze. Other diplomats passed by, barely acknowledging him. To them, he was just another minor ambassador from a minor species. They had no idea that everything was about to change. Chen found a quiet observation deck and sat down, staring out at the stars. His personal communicator buzzed. It was a secure channel from Earth, voice only. He answered immediately. This is Chen. Director, this is Fleet Admiral Akoro Adai. I assume the council rejected the petition. They didn't even give me a full hearing, Chen said bitterly. 5 minutes. That's all the Kelara were worth to them. There was a pause. Then Adai said quietly, then we proceed as planned. Protocol Lazarus is now active. Chen felt his breath catch. Are you certain? There's no going back once we do this. The council had their chance, Adai replied. They chose silence. Now we show them the price of that choice. Return to Earth immediately. The fleet mobilizes in 48 hours. The connection ended. Chen sat back and closed his eyes. Protocol Lazarus. The plan that humanity had been developing in secret for 40 years, ever since they realized how the galaxy truly worked. The plan that would either save them or destroy them. He thought back to Earth, to the hidden shipyards in the outer solar system, to the massive construction projects that other species had dismissed as civilian infrastructure. Humanity had been building something in the darkness, something terrible and necessary, because humans had learned a hard lesson when they first joined galactic society. The strong didn't help the weak. The powerful didn't protect the vulnerable. In this galaxy, you stood alone or you fell alone. The Council's refusal to help the Kelara was just another confirmation of what humanity already knew. But humanity remembered. They remembered being alone on Earth, divided into nations that fought endlessly. They remembered the hard climb to unity, the wars that nearly destroyed them, the choice to finally work together or die. And when they reached the stars and saw how the galaxy operated, they made a decision. Never again. Not to humanity, not to anyone who called for help. The journey back to Earth took 3 days. Chen spent most of it reviewing classified documents, preparing himself for what was coming. He learned things that shocked him, even though he'd suspected some of it. The scale of what humanity had built was staggering. Earth had been preparing for war since the day they joined the Galactic Council. Not openly, not obviously, but methodically and completely. While other species laughed at human primitive kinetics and obsolete projectile weapons, Earth had been perfecting them to a degree nobody could imagine. Chen read reports about rail guns that could accelerate projectiles to 30% the speed of light, nuclear weapons with yields measured in gigatons, armor plating so thick it could withstand direct hits from energy weapons, ships designed not for elegance but for brutal efficiency. And the numbers. God, the numbers. Humanity had been building fleets in secret locations across the solar system and beyond. How had they hidden it? Chen found the answer in the files. Other species were arrogant. They saw what they expected to see. When they looked at Earth's construction projects, they saw civilian infrastructure, mining operations, scientific research. They never looked deeper because they didn't think humans were capable of deception on this scale. The transport arrived at Earth orbit. Chen transferred to a shuttle that took him down to Geneva, to the underground complex that housed United Earth Command. He passed through multiple security checkpoints, each one more intense than the last. Finally, he was escorted to the war room. The war room was a massive space carved out of solid rock deep beneath the Swiss Alps. Holographic displays showed ship positions, resource allocations, communication networks. Hundreds of people worked at terminals, coordinating the largest military operation in human history. At the center of it all stood Fleet Admiral Akoro Adai. Adai was a tall woman with dark skin and gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She'd commanded Earth's defense fleet during the border wars with the Century Pirates. She'd lost her ship and half her crew, but completed the mission. She was exactly the kind of person you wanted leading humanity into the unknown. "Director Chen," Adai said, turning to greet him. "Welcome home. I trust the council was as disappointing as expected." "They wouldn't even listen," Chen replied. "The Anthari representative called us emotional and naive." "Good," Adai said. "Let them think that. It'll make this more effective." "Admiral, are we really doing this?" Adai gestured to the holographic displays. "We're not going to war, Director. We're ending one. The Vorash have been consuming civilizations for 1,000 years because nobody had the courage to stop them. The Council is content to let species die as long as it doesn't affect them directly. That ends now." "But what if we fail?" Chen asked. "What if the fleet isn't enough?" "Then we fail together," Adai said simply. "But I don't think we will. Humans have an advantage that other species don't understand. We're stubborn. We don't know when to quit. And we've spent 40 years building something that the galaxy isn't ready for." She pulled up a new display showing ship positions throughout the solar system and beyond. Hundreds of markers, each one representing a capital ship. Thousands more for support vessels. Chen stared at the numbers and felt his mind struggle to comprehend the scale. "How did we build all this?" he whispered. "Carefully," said a new voice. Dr. Natalia Volkov, chief engineer of the entire project, a Russian woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and grease stains on her hands. "We started small. One shipyard, then 2, then 10. We built them in the outer solar system, in the Kuiper belt, in interstellar space, places where other species don't look. We automated most of the process and used AI to coordinate construction. It took 40 years, but we did it." "And nobody noticed?" Chen asked. "They noticed," Volkov said with a slight smile. "But they saw what they expected. Mining operations, scientific research, civilian construction projects. The Crystalline Collective even sent inspectors to some of our facilities. They looked at our rail gun foundries and thought they were making industrial equipment. Humans are good at misdirection, Director Chen. We've been doing it to each other for thousands of years." Adai brought up another display, this one showing the Thessar system in real time. The Kalara defense fleet was down to less than 100 ships. The Vorash swarm surrounded the planet like a living shroud. Even as they watched, another Kalara ship exploded. "We're running out of time," Adai said. "The fleet is assembled. All ships are armed and ready. Crews have been briefed. We're waiting on your order, Director." Chen blinked in surprise. "My order? Admiral, I'm just a diplomat. You command the military." "This isn't just a military decision," Adai replied. "This is the moment humanity steps onto the galactic stage as a major power. The Council will see this as an act of aggression. They'll demand explanations. Some species might even declare war on us. You need to be prepared for the political fallout." Chen looked at the display, at the dying Kalara fleet, at the billions of lives hanging in the balance. He thought about the Council, about their cold dismissal, about the way they treated him like a child. He thought about humanity's long history of standing up to bullies, of fighting for what was right, even when it was stupid and dangerous. "Activate Protocol Lazarus," Chen said. "Send the fleet." Adai nodded once. She turned to her staff and spoke clearly. "All stations, this is Fleet Admiral Adai. Protocol Lazarus is now active. Initiate fleet mobilization. Jump coordinates Thessar Prime System. Prepare for hostile engagement with Vorash swarm forces. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. The war room erupted in controlled chaos. Officers shouted orders. Displays lit up with movement. Across the solar system, in hidden shipyards and secret bases, humanity's military machine came to life. Chen watched it happen and felt a strange mix of fear and pride. Humanity was about to do something insane. They were going to war with a force that had consumed 17 civilizations. They were going to defy the Galactic Council's decision. They were going to risk everything for people they barely knew. But that was humanity. That was what made them different. They'd spent their entire history fighting for impossible causes and somehow surviving. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe this time they'd fail. Or maybe, just maybe, the galaxy was about to learn that humans don't abandon their friends. Ambassador Lyra Morin floated in zero gravity aboard what remained of the Kelthara command vessel Steadfast Resolve. The ship was dying slowly, atmosphere leaking from dozens of hull breaches, power fluctuating as damaged systems fought to stay online. Around her, Kellara crew members worked frantically to keep their ship functional for just a little longer. It had been 2 days since the fall of Thessar Prime. 2 days since High Commander Vesthal had sacrificed himself to save the last evacuation transport. Moraine had watched it happen from the Mercy's dawn, had seen the eternal vigil explode in silent fire. She'd cried then. She was done crying now. The Kellara refugees had scattered across 3 systems, seeking shelter wherever they could find it. Most stations had accepted them reluctantly, offering minimal support. The galaxy wasn't generous to the defeated. Moraine had transferred to the Steadfast Resolve, one of the few remaining combat vessels, because she refused to sit safely in a refugee camp while the Kelthara fought their last battle. "Ambassador, you should be in a secure section," said Captain Thrivel. The Kelthara officer had lost one arm in the fighting, but she commanded her ship with calm efficiency despite the pain. "The Vorash are pushing closer. This vessel will be a target." "Everywhere is a target now," Moraine replied. "I might as well be useful." She was helping coordinate communications between the scattered Kellara forces. It was a hopeless task. The Alliance had perhaps 60 ships left, spread across multiple systems, all damaged and low on supplies. The Vorash swarm had thousands. They were hunting down the survivors methodically, consuming every ship they found. Moraine's communicator buzzed. She checked it and saw a message from a Kellara civilian station in the neighboring system. The Vorash had found them. They were requesting evacuation support. Moraine looked at her tactical display and felt her heart sink. There were no ships close enough to help. The civilians would die alone. She sent a response anyway, promising help that would never come. What else could she do? At least they'd die with hope instead of despair. "Contact on long-range sensors," announced the Steadfast Resolve's tactical officer. "Multiple Vorash biovessels approaching from Galactic North. Estimate 200 vessels." 200. The Steadfast Resolve had 3 working weapon systems and shields that barely functioned. This wouldn't be a battle. This would be an execution. "Prepare to jump to hyperspace," Captain Thrivel ordered. "Set course for the rally point." "Captain, if we jump, the civilian station in the next system will have no protection," Moraine said quietly. Thrivel's face, already exhausted, became even more tired. "I know, Ambassador, but we cannot save them. We can only survive and hope that survival means something." The words hung in the air. Moraine wanted to argue, to demand they stay and fight, but she knew Thrivel was right. The Kelthara had been making these impossible choices for weeks. Save one group or another. Fight here or retreat there. Every decision meant someone died. Every choice meant someone was abandoned. "Jump drive is offline,"